Hey, it's Sarah Burke here from the Women in Media podcast. And before we get started on a new episode, could I get you to hit like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell, whichever app you do your podcast listening in. Make sure you're all set up so you know when there's a new episode and you can help spread the word. Oh, and if you're so inclined, could I ask you to leave a review if the app that you're using does that? You're the best. All right, let's get to the show. I'm Sarah Burke, and this is the Women in Media podcast. I'd bet that you know a lot about my guest today already. She's a family woman first. She cares deeply about giving back. And from news to entertainment, she truly does what it takes to get the job done.
I can remember being a camerawoman in Toronto and being down at the courthouse and trying to get into a scrum, and nobody would let me in. So I would crawl underneath all the men's legs and pop up in the middle of the scrum to be able to get my shot. You know, and I remember it being, oh, it's so cute. It's so cute. People were supportive, but I was always looked at, and I knew it. Oh, look at that. Yeah, cute. I was like, no, making people happy. That's my thing. Making people connect over something positive. That's my thing.
Although she's a big name in Canadian television, there is still so much to learn about my guest today, Cheryl Hickey of ET Canada. I know you're busy. We're in the middle of another lockdown here in Ontario. How are you finding juggling all the things, the family and the work?
Right now, as we talk, I was literally running into the kids' room and being like, okay, listen, stay on your Zoom. If you run into any troubles, ask your brother. Unless the house is burning down, just don't come in. So it's one of those things that, you know, I don't know. Every day is changing. We're just trying to keep it light and as fun as possible, and you know, be grateful for what we do have instead of the things that we don't.
Yeah, and right off the top, I actually wanted to mention to you, I super respect how real you're keeping it on your Instagram. It's not just celebrities and all as well. You're sharing a lot about what's going on in your life.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. You know, on and off over the years, I've shared bits here and there, and I think through ET Canada, a lot of it is made to look really perfect, right? I mean, it's entertainment, it's flashy, it's Hollywood, celebrity, it's all that stuff. But it was stressful for me not to be the real me and do all of that. And that was one thing. And I'm starting to talk about a little bit more. I really struggled with the whole perfect thing. That was actually really hard and stressful. So especially over this last year, it's just been so much easier to be honest about things, especially when things are not going great in our family. It's easier if I disappear for a few days off of Insta story, or I'm not posting as much. You can gather that maybe there's some tough stuff going on. So if I'm open and honest about that, I feel less pressure, you know?
Got you. So I'm also a grad of Fanshawe's broadcast journalism program, and
yes,
our profs used to talk about you all the time. So it's very funny and full circle for me to be talking to you right now. I think it was just recently you posted a photo holding one of those little recorders out in the rain. Tell me about the beginning of your career. Did you always think you wanted to end up in entertainment news?
You know, I can remember being really young in our living room, and I had like a little recorder. And I said to my mom, I just want you to hear me sing. I'm just going to sing. And I sang Whitney Houston to her, and she was like, amazing. And I could tell on her face, she was like, you can't sing. But I was always fascinated with the microphone. And I always watched my parents watching Barbara Walters and watching big interviews and stuff. And by nature, I'm a very chatty person. I am very curious about everything. And so one summer, you know, my dad was like, you can't just go to Sauble Beach and lay in the sun and go to the dunes parties at night. You need to do something. So he took me up to the cable station because there had been an ad. They were looking for volunteers. And I volunteered there that summer, and I just fell in love with media. I fell in love with all the different jobs, all the possibility. It just seemed like this giant world, and I was really eager to get into it.
Was that like a summer cruiser personality for the news station?
So I didn't get the summer cruiser position until I came back from Fanshawe College. But no, it was much more ground level. I was, pulling cables. I was cleaning. I was getting coffee. They did give me a little VHS camera, and I ran around and videotaped a bunch of nature. And then at night I edited it, and I think it became a spot in the middle of the night. But yeah, so not glamorous at all.
When did it swing over to like celebrities and entertainment for you?
I think it swung over to celebrities when I worked in, so prior to Entertainment Tonight, I worked in in radio for a few years. I worked in a newsroom as a camera woman and a producer, and then a writer, a helicopter switcher, and then I became just a general beat reporter. And I was covering a lot more crime. And I remember and even as I talk about it, like, it kind of takes my breath away. I don't know about you, but I absorb people's energy, and I can feel when people are sad, or it hits me differently than I ever expected it to. And so I would be doing these stories, and I would be knocking on someone's door after they'd lost a loved one, and I was asking for a picture so I could put it up on the 11 o'clock news. And I could hear the crying of the families, and I felt it in my stomach. Like, I could literally, it was a physical feeling. And I would go to crime scenes, and I would, see the tarps over the bodies. And again, like, I would just get a headache, and it was just very physical for me. And I remember thinking, there was one family I had met, and the daughter had been hit by a car. And I went in to interview the mother, and she was so grief stricken that she asked me to come in and sit down. And she started to go through her daughter's closet and wanted to give me her clothes because she felt we were the same size. And I just remember being so sick to my stomach and not being able to really separate that at that moment. And I just knew that I needed a change. And so when opportunities for, like, what they called back then kicker stories would come up, I'd be like, I'll do it. First day of school. You want me to make a story out of first day of school? And then I'd put my Saturday Night Live brain on, and I'd be like, okay, what can we do with this? Like, how can we make this fun? What can we do? And I would go back to me and my sister making fun videos, and I'd think of creative ways to tell the story, add a little music, get funny clips of the kids, and I really enjoyed doing that. And that just I could feel myself filling back up. And then when I saw other people's reactions to it, like, that made them laugh, or they smiled, or they thought that was fun, I was like, no, making people happy, that's my thing. Making people connect over something positive, that's my thing. My hat goes off to crime reporters, news reporters, hard news anchors, because it is one heck of a job, especially right now. I don't know how they're doing it, but I just knew that for me, I connected more in my soul when I saw that I was making people happy, or giving them something to talk about. And that was the big change for me. That's where I knew I needed to go.
I really feel that, actually. I started off in broadcast journalism and ended up in music. So, yeah. I used to live actually with a reporter from Global News, and, she would come home some days and she covered some really heavy stories. And there's such a maintenance in your self-care that is involved in recovering just from your work day when you work in those roles, for sure.
Absolutely. There is. And I think you just know if that is your calling or your thing, or it's not. And for me, it was just not. Doing crime was just not something I could do.
So with the ET Canada, when you were getting into the public eye more, becoming a host of ET Canada is, it's a well-known position. And I would say that almost everyone in Canada would know who you are. In separating family life and public life and all of that, do you remember those first conversations maybe with your husband about how that was going to
go? Well, there's still conversations that we have now. My husband is incredibly protective of our kids and of me, but of our family. And when we first got together, I remember a magazine wanted to do a photo shoot with my husband and I, and he was like, this is not my thing. Like, I'm a director, I'm a producer. This is not, I'm like, come on. It's part of my life. So he's done a few photo shoots with me, before the kids. And then We've had photo shoots with the kids in it. I think his whole, and I'm grateful that he has this view. The kids have their own lives. Kevin has his own life. This is my life. I've chosen to be public and open, but I have to give grace to my kids and to Kevin. Also, out of safety for the kids is a big thing. Because I think that's another thing people don't often talk about in the media, is that there are some people who aren't super kind, and you have to be careful also. And I don't give a lot of light to that, but so that's a real part of this business. And for the kids, I think that having their privacy, especially when they're babies, I took lots of pictures and posted about them and that kind of thing a little bit. But now as they are getting older and they're identifiable, you'll see less and less of my son on my social, because he's 11 and it's his life. And what was cute 2 years ago may be teasable a few years from now. And I want to make sure that I protect that for him,
For sure.
And my daughter too.
The way that you do share pieces of your life, you talked about filling up your cup, and now you have a couple other projects on the go that it seems as though there were other things calling you than just ET Canada. So tell me a little bit about the HGTV show and Cheryl's Home and Family.
Yeah, I mean, they both kind of coincide with each other. I think everything that I do starts and ends with family. It just does. And it always has. I've always gravitated towards stories that have to do with family or people who are very family oriented. And so when the opportunity for Family Home Overhaul came up, I jumped at the chance, because the idea of giving someone a overhaul when they need it most is and was the most exciting adventure. I mean, we did this show leading up to a global pandemic, and we had no idea that that was obviously going to happen. We had no idea that that was coming down the pipe. And when I think now that we changed 8 families' lives right before the world shut down, knowing that they're in a safe, happy, comfortable, amazing home just gives me and our crew so much comfort during this time. I don't know if we're going to get to do the show again, because it's a hard show to shoot in a pandemic. But, at the very least, we changed 8 people's families and lives, and did it at a time when they needed it most. And so I'll just hold on to that forever. I just think that was just the greatest gift. Cheryl's Home and Family, I created, last March with 5 business partners. And we had been planning the relaunch of this 2 years ago. And we weren't sure if we were going to go ahead with it, but we decided that, this is the time to do it, because all of our products are comfort products: weighted blankets, snuggle blankets for toddlers up to teens, up to adults, a breastfeeding pillow, teething. It's all products for comfort. And so we just decided that we were going to go forward and do it. And again, it has to do with family and comfort for the family. So it sort of always made sense. I've always been a bit of an entrepreneur. My mom and I used to sit up when we couldn't sleep at night, and we'd have a book where there was all ideas of things we wanted to create. And so being able to continue to do that in my adult years is just really exciting,
With or without the Whitney Houston soundtrack.
With or without the Whitney Houston soundtrack, but I still listen to it. Yeah.
So how does a normal day look for you with all these projects, right? So ET Canada, you're shooting, is it early afternoon? How does a day look in Cheryl Hickey's life now?
Okay, so I wake up at 6:30, and first things first, I used to turn my phone on and go and figure out what's going on in the world. I don't do that anymore.
I'm trying so hard to not do that now.
No, first thing, I get my coffee. I have we'll get detailed here. I'll have a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Then I'll have my coffee with oat milk. Then I'll go sit down and I will write out the things that I'm grateful for. And then I will go and wake my kids up. And I might watch a little bit of news, but we don't watch a lot of news in the morning right now, just because how the kids have been handling some of the news in the pandemic. We're just trying to keep it even here. Then I get the kids all ready. Now that they're homeschooling, I just do breakfasts, and then we get everybody, I tell them they have to get dressed as though we're having a day. Occasionally on a Friday, we'll wear pajamas all day, but I'm a big believer, if you look good, you feel good. It's you put some energy into yourself. So we all get dressed, we brush our teeth, we make our beds, we do the things. And then they start on their day. While they're just getting hooked up to learning, I'm usually on a call listening to the morning lineup of what's going on with our show. And when that's done, I will, if I have like 30 minutes to do emails, I'll do it on the treadmill. So trying to combine the two.
Wow.
And if I have an extra 30 minutes, I'll try and work out. So then shower, and usually have an interview or something going on in the morning, or something like we're doing right now. And then I think we were shooting the show at 11, but I think we're now bumping that to 1. So probably make the kids lunch, take them outside, get them some sort of activity. In between that, we're taking calls, we're doing voiceovers for the show. You get it in where you can. A producer will write me and say, can you do this VO right now? And you're in the middle of chopping carrots. You're like, yep, we go do that. And that's kind of how it goes. Then we shoot the show. Show's done, usually interviews in the afternoon. Kids aren't at school right now, so I don't have to go and do the pickup. Usually end my day around 3 or 4, depending on, again, everything's just up in the air. It's whatever we need, we do. That's it. And then it's kids. And when the kids go to bed or right after school, I will have meetings for Cheryl's Home and Family. I will do social media for Cheryl's Home and Family. Usually between the 3 and 5 mark is where I try to get some of the social media work in. And then in the evening after the kids go to bed, I will sit down and look at the emails for Cheryl's Home and Family, plan, work, do. And then I've got a couple other projects that I'm working on right now with some other partners. So I'm trying to get those going. So that usually happens starting at about 9 o'clock at night.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's so common that so many women in the industry are so driven, right? So there's things to do.
Yeah, I think it's drive and excitement. Like these are not things that I feel like I have to do. These are things I want to do. Yeah. I love going to work at HGTV Canada every day, whether it is from home or at work. I love creating the things I'm creating for Cheryl's Home and Family. And I'm super excited about the projects and things we have coming down the pipe. So it doesn't feel like work when you're really excited about something,
Oh, I hear that. Yeah. One of my friends said, I don't understand why you're starting a podcast. Like you're the busiest person I know in radio, and you have 2 jobs right now. I'm doing some shifts at Indy 88 while I'm working my full time at Sirius XM. And I said, well, it's because I think these stories need to be told, and it's filling my cup. So that's exactly what it's about.
That's it, right? Like you know what you're good at, and you know what works for you, and you're having fun doing it. So why not do more of it, right?
Yeah. So there's something to be said about your employer having your back, and with the little that you've shared about what's going on with your dad over the last year, and how ET Canada has sort of pivoted to the work from home in such a seamless way. Like the show still looks great. You wouldn't really know all that stuff going on behind the scenes. How were those early conversations in the pandemic to make this work? Shooting from home and all that.
Oh, listen, we were all shot out of a cannon. I think like everybody else. I think we were down, off air running holiday shows, maybe for a week, maybe 2 weeks. But yeah, I mean, I've got the easy job, to be honest. Our editors, our producers, everybody who had to, like, they has to physically put, our graphics guys, all of those people really had to figure it out quickly. Our TDs, our technicals, our cameramen, those were the ones who, were up all night really trying to figure it out. Yeah, sure. I had to figure out how to put up a light, tried to figure out the schedule with the families. It's figuring out when the kids come in and they need you, and they need to know that you're always there for them. That's the thing that makes them feel secure through all this craziness, but still be able to do my job. And we still put a great show on every night. But the incredible amount of work that's gone on behind the scenes with our technical crew, like they're the heroes out of this. Yeah. And it took a lot of adjustment, but we're here, and our ratings have gone up. People are loving the show. They let us into their home every night, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. So I'm just super grateful,
And like I said off the top, you do a really good job of keeping things positive when you may not be feeling that way at all inside. Mm-hmm. Being in the spotlight and literally lights, camera, action every day for you, how do you put that face on every day?
I think it's a choice. I think there are times when I have a good cry, for sure. You have to let the air out of the tire. You'll burst if you don't. But I think I'm making a choice to look at the things that we do have as opposed to things that we don't. Listen, there's a lot of bad stuff. My dad's in long-term care. He got COVID. My mom has to have double hip surgery. Like there's a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff. My brother had a heart attack at Christmas. And he shouldn't have survived, but he did. And grateful. So I could look at all those things and go, holy cow, this last 10 months. But I'm choosing to look at it going, holy cow, my dad survived COVID. My brother survived what they call the widowmaker. My mom's getting 2 new hips. So I'm changing the narrative in my head to the good. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding by doing that, I'm still acknowledging that those things are scary, but I'm acknowledging the good out of them. And those are where I'm shining the light. And I'm finding that the more that I do that, the better I feel. And the better I feel around my kids, because if I'm good, they're good. Mm-hmm. And I only hurt more when I see them hurting. And I've been reading a lot of books to get there. Like there's been things I've been doing. I've been meditating with a guy named Glenn Harold for like 3 years, but I've really upped my meditation game, certainly in the last year. Reading some great books. Where are they? I've been reading The Superhuman. I've been reading The Super Attractor. I've got that one. Yeah, it's great, right? I've been reading The Secret. I've been reading Jay Shetty's book. Like there's a lot of books that talk about, how you see things. I think that's the answer. I don't know.
Earlier in your career, were the tools that you might have been using for self-care, mental health, different than they are now? Like you mentioned the, gratitude journal, it sounds like, and your morning routine.
I would say it's certainly gotten bigger. But my mom always did that. My mom was always very glass half full. She was always teaching us that you're in control of your mind. So those were always things that we did when we were younger. And then certainly in 2009, when, sort of Oprah really started to talk about The Secret and mind over matter and really understanding the brain and how we think and how we act and how we treat people, I was really drawn to all of that. And so I've really been, doing a lot of that over the years. But again, in this last year, I've really gone deeper into that. And I found that it's been incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I think I'm just at the beginning of that journey because I did a lot of avoiding before the pandemic, staying really busy.
Because that worked.
Yeah. And in this industry, it's very easy to keep your calendar completely packed and not give yourself any time to reflect on what has gone on in your life. Right. So yeah, I think I'm just at the beginning of that journey, but it's certainly helping and trying to take all those things a little more seriously. You mentioned Oprah. Was she one of your biggest moments in your career?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that Oprah. Listen, every day at 4:30, I, like everyone else, loved watching her because it really felt like you would watch her show and you would finish watching her show and you learned something that you were going to try and use in your life that day. I miss those days. I miss that day, that kind of television where she talked to like the Dalai Lama. She talked to the Jim Quicks, like people like that. And then she had the splash of celebrity in there. And I loved that. And then meeting her.
What was that like? Oh my God.
Oh, I was shaking. I was so nervous. And it wasn't nervous. I was just so excited. And I remember the first time I met her, I actually had the flu or was getting over the flu, which you would never do now. You would never go to an interview not feeling well. But back then, you just went. You just did it. So I wasn't feeling very well. And I remember thinking, geez, had I been feeling really, really good, I probably would have worked myself up and been more nervous. But because I was focusing on just like, oh, I don't feel good, I was way less stressed. So, but meeting her was amazing. She gave me the big old Cheryl Hickey, and then this big, big monster hug. And her energy is just, you can feel it vibrating off of her. And the second time I met her, just the same. When she talks to you, she dials into you. She listens to your question. Like, she really listens and gives a different answer. Like, I was in a line with a bunch of different reporters, and she gave different answers to sometimes the same question. She would just think about it differently.
Such a pro.
So she's so thoughtful and intentional, and a pro. You're right.
Is there one woman that you would say made you want to get into media?
I mean, listen, I think it was a good combination of like Barbara Walters, Oprah Winfrey. Those two women, I would say, were really influential. And I was lucky enough to interview both of them, and they're incredible.
What did you admire about them? What were those pieces of them? So Oprah, we've talked about. Barbara Walters, maybe you can speak about.
Barbara Walters, I really loved how she would listen. She was a great listener in an interview. And then if someone said something, she'd pin it and let that person go on and on and on and on where they were going. But then she'd go right back and she'd dig back into that. So she never lost her thread. And I found that to be really incredible. Oprah, I would say it was her compassion and her ability to think past the question. She would think 360. How did that make that person feel? What does that mean? What does it mean for the future? There was a lot going on in an Oprah question. And for me, I thought that was pretty fascinating.
I honestly don't even think I realized how much was going on in an Oprah question until that Meghan Markle. And
right.
Like, what an interview. What an interview.
That was a lesson for all journalists who are, journalism nerds. That was a lesson. That was a masterclass. That was incredible. Hopefully they're showing that in schools for years to come. It was brilliant. And it really was the art of listening too. We can have our questions written down. But the best interviewers are one that listen and find those nuggets.
Yeah, totally.
That's the ticket.
So if you were talking to Fanshawe College tomorrow, to their students, what would be your best piece of advice that you'd want to pass on to those up and comers in the industry right now?
Don't listen to people when they say it's the most difficult time to get into the business. Every year, people tell you it's the most difficult time to get in the business. They did that when I was in school, and I remember someone saying that to me before.
And to me. It's
always hard. And to you, I'm sure they did. Everything's condensed. Television is dying, and so is radio. Listen, I don't think TV's going anywhere. The pieces of the pie are getting smaller, and they're changing for sure. If anything, you have more opportunity now because the landscape is so wide and so big. My best piece of advice would be find your voice, find what makes you tick, and then start creating. Don't wait for a network job. Don't wait for the pinnacle job. Start creating now. The internet is your friend. That's what you need. And I would also say be incredibly mindful about your digital footprint. That means your texts. That means your emails. That means your social media. That means your YouTube, because that stuff doesn't go away and that will change your life. So I think that a lot of people in college and university, when they're recording all the videos at parties and doing all your things, think about it. Think about it. It's really important. And be authentic. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah. Do you remember a piece of advice that someone gave you that stuck with you? Something someone said to you a long time ago?
Yeah, I think it's my mom's one. And she's like, don't borrow worries from tomorrow. Oh, it's the biggest one.
I love that.
It's just, you can't. I saw this great thing where someone took an hourglass sand timer and they flipped it upside down. And they said, if you look at life like that, the sand that's already here on the bottom is the sand that's already gone by. If we keep focusing on things that are already gone, you're missing living in that moment. All that sand's going and you're just wasting time looking back. So sure, look back, find out the lesson, and then get back in the present as soon as possible,
Completely. What is the moment that you are most proud of in your career?
The moment I'm most proud of in my career. I think there's a couple top points. I think getting the job at ET Canada was a big one. I was told out of the gate that I wouldn't be getting the job, that they didn't want someone like me. And so I'd fully accepted that I wasn't getting the job.
Someone like you, like who says that?
They didn't want someone that people knew. They wanted to start fresh. And I was like, yeah, get it. And I was just then, you get your brain into like, okay, so what am I going to do next? Where am I going to go? And they came back and they said, with all of your qualifications and all the things that they said, we'd like to offer you the job. So I was really grateful and shocked and surprised, and obviously very happy to take the job and to get to work with the team that I got to work with. I was really excited. So that was a big deal. Certainly coming from Owen Sound, knowing nobody, in this industry, Toronto seems so scary. All of it, like it was wild. So that was a big moment for sure. And then I think hosting Family Home Overhaul, getting to look into those families' eyes and knowing that we were changing their lives, like really changing their lives. And it was so personal for them, each one of them. So I think those 8 moments were the biggest,
Yeah. What about one of your toughest moments in the spotlight? Because one of the things I'm so intrigued with this podcast is when a woman has to recover from a moment and rebuild from a moment, people are watching, people are listening.
Yeah. My most difficult, I don't like to give much light to this, but there was a person who went after my family because they were convinced that we were going to be husband and wife, and they were very fixated on me, and they went after and went to my parents' house, and they were subsequently arrested and put away and all that sort of thing. And I think that for me, understanding that my personal safety had changed based on me being a public person became really scary. And I think realizing that I had now put my whole family in that situation was very hard. And then when that person got out of jail, having to live with that fear of, okay, well, what is it? Well, what's next? So, and then you have to go on air and pretend like nothing's happening and everything's fine and everything's good and be confident and all those things. I really struggled with that for a long time, and it gave me great anxiety. And even, so that was a really, really big one. That was very pivotal for me.
Yeah.
It's really hard to explain that piece because I don't want to give a lot of light to those behaviors, but something is really taken from a person, your personal safety, when that happens, and you just never really get it back, that innocence, Mm-hmm. And so that, for me, it still sticks with me. It's still here.
Yeah, I think in not giving it light, I think we pivot that to be what's the lesson learned and how you came out of that situation. And, now you have a different perspective on how you want to separate the two spaces, right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. What did I learn from that? That I'm fiercely protective of my family. I always have been, but if you don't see their face on an Easter post or a Christmas post, there's a reason for me not doing that. I'm proud of them, and I'll show you their feet sometimes, and occasionally you see their face, but I'm really, really protective, and that's why.
Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine going through something like that. I mean, I've had, a couple scary listener situations over the years, and, like when your face is all over a website, you're recognized at the gas station. The first time that someone approached me at the gas station, I was dumbfounded. I remember it was in mm-hmm. London, Ontario. Yeah. Just like mm-hmm. early when social media was just taking off. And yeah, being in the public space comes with great responsibility sometimes too.
There does. And I think for women especially, it's different. I know we can say all day long that it's the same for men as it is for women, but it's a little different. And yeah, so I'm very, when it comes to, even teaching my kids about digital responsibility now, I just hammer it into their head about understanding that your privacy is your privacy.
Mhm.
So,
As such a prominent figure in Canadian media, how has your experience been as a woman in comparison to men?
oh gosh, there were really hard times for sure. I can remember being a camerawoman in Toronto and being down at the courthouse and trying to get into a scrum, and nobody would let me in. So I would crawl underneath all the men's legs and pop up in the middle of the scrum to be able to get my shot, And I remember it being, oh, it's so cute. It's so cute. People were supportive, but I was always looked at, and I knew it. With, oh, look at that. Oh, cute.
Don't
Oh,
call me
cute.
cute. I'm getting the
Right?
story. I'm getting the story
Right.
here. Yeah.
Right. So that happened a lot. Um, yeah, and I think that sometimes when you use your voice, you can be seen as sometimes difficult if you speak up and someone doesn't like the way you said it. Because if a man said it that way, it'd be okay. But if a woman said it that way, she's being difficult. So yeah, I think myself and all the women in media who've come up and paved the way, we've all dealt with that. And you just, I think, we found ways around that and continued anyway. That's just what you do.
Totally. In women sharing the media space, even, I watched you go on City with Tracy Moore the other day.
Yeah.
I really love and respect how even women from different networks make sure that they're sharing stories from each other's lives. Has there been a moment where you felt a change with that? Because I know early in my career, I felt a little more threatened, and now I'm all about sharing. I've
Yeah.
gone on that journey.
I think for a really long time, it was the executives who wanted to keep all of us separated. And then I think all of us women, this generation of broadcasters, were like, no, 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 no. We support each other. We're going to raise each other up. That's what we do. And I think that we all did it in tandem with each other. And so it just happened. It just happened like a wave. And I'm grateful for it. I think I'm friends with all the women in media. We all support each other, especially with the women with the side hustles. I mean, you have to support and elevate each other. And I think it's so important to be there for each other, especially during this time. This is here to stay for sure. Someone else's success is something we should all get excited about, because it means that we're moving in the right direction, really.
I truly feel that way too. I'm trying to get everyone to nominate 3 women that their stories need to be told on this podcast. So who are your 3?
I would say Tracy Moore from Cityline. I think Tracy is just so incredible. Her journalism journey is so rich and so incredible, and especially what she's done in this last year. Really creating such a beautiful platform for change is one that needs to be celebrated and talked about more. Tracy Melchior is a woman who I think has dealt with so much adversity and has been, very vocal about grief and how to face it, and has given people such peace and understanding. And there's just such a beautiful, again, grace in that. Farah Nasser, I think, who is the news anchor for Global News. When you look at a consummate professional and a woman in journalism, and you look at everything that she has had thrown her way and how she rides that wave, I think she would be fascinating to talk to, especially to see how she's managing to navigate this pandemic world and then share it with everyone else and separate it and come home and be able to be safe within herself. I think that would be a fascinating story. There's so many women doing like pretty wild things in the entertainment industry. And if you think of entertainment as sports, music, all of that, you're going to go on forever. Your pond is just forever full.
I can't believe that this wasn't being done.
Well, this is great. If you ever need more names, just call me and I will give you more, because there's tons that I could think of that would be, I'm excited for you. So good. So much to do.
Thank you. Well, like I said before, I just want to wrap by saying, I completely admire how real you are keeping it. When it's not a good day, it's not a good day. Everyone has those days, and it's not all just celebrities and sparkles. These are humans.
It's not. That's right. Well, thank you for doing this. I know you're so busy, and then you're taking this podcast on. I mean, that's incredible. Thank you.
I just want to tell more of these stories.
I think it's awesome. Congratulations.
It's really easy to make assumptions about women in media based on what we see and what's public facing. But as Cheryl demonstrates, there's a lot more to the story. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts, and that way you'll know when I have a new episode up. You can also follow along at Women in Media Pod on Instagram and Twitter for news and updates, or facebook.com/Women in Media Pod. My next guest is an award-winning Indigenous artist and radio host. Thank you so much for listening. Consider passing this episode along to someone you think needs to hear it. And until next episode, I'm Sarah Burke.
Hi, I'm Matt Kundle, host of the Sound Off Podcast, the podcast about broadcast. Every week since 2016, we've been bringing on broadcast leaders to talk about their experiences in radio, what they've seen, and where they believe it is all going. If you live and love radio, subscribe to the Sound Off Podcast with Matt Kundle wherever you get your podcasts.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.